Zechariah Session 3. I read chapter 3 before the session, and I looked at the slide in chapter 1. I thought, you're such a dope.
Well, doesn't matter.
So I'm ahead of you on 3.
Okay, good.
Barbara's here too now.
Oh, good. Hi, Barbara.
Hello. Kathy won't be here tonight. She's babysitting her niece's 2 youngest.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. Well, we are in Zechariah. Zechariah, the first half of Zechariah, something like that, has like 8 specific visions that God gave to Zechariah through an angel. They're primarily focused on Israel during Zechariah's time, although we'll see as we go through the visions we talk about today that almost all the visions have an element of prophecy towards when Jesus Christ is the king. But Zechariah was commissioned to kickstart the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Basically, that's what it was. He and Haggai were contemporaries, and God called them to get the people back on task to build the temple. So the temple rebuilding had started 20 years before Zechariah began prophesying, but it had been abandoned for 16 years because of local opposition. And God clearly wanted them to finish it. So the first part of Zechariah chapter 1 was a call from God to return to him. And he says, if you return to me, I will return to you. We talked about that great message. Last week, we studied the first vision, which was a vision of multicolored horses. And the vision included an angel and the angel of the Lord. And in that vision, the angel of the Lord interceded for the returned exiles, and God promised mercy on Jerusalem and told them to build the temple. And he promised prosperity for Jerusalem. Today, we're going to begin by studying the second vision, which is the vision of the horns and the craftsmen. We're actually going to do 2 visions, the horns and the craftsmen. And then the next vision is, why can't I remember it off the
High
top?
priest.
The next vision is
Design.
the vision of a man with a measuring line.
Measurement.
That's chapter 2. Okay, let's start with the horns and the craftsmen, and that's Zechariah 1, verses 18 to 21. Gary, could you read that one?
Absolutely. Lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 horns. And I said to the angel who talked with me, what are these? And he said to me, these are the horns that have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. Then the Lord showed me 4 craftsmen, and I said, what are these coming to do? He said, these are the horns that scattered Judah so that no one raised his head. And these have come to terrify them, to cast down the horns of the nation who lifted up their horns against the land of Judah to scatter it.
Okay. So horns in the Bible represent power.
Okay.
And when you look at, when we studied Revelation, there are visions of these beasts and so forth. They all had multiple horns. And in Daniel, there are visions of beasts with multiple horns. Horns represent power and strength. Think about a bull with horns, especially a longhorn bull. They sweep those horns around. It's frightening, actually, because they can gore you real fast, and those things are heavy and strong. And think about a hunter that's going out after animals. When they're hunting, they always want to get a deer, elk, or moose that has a large set of horns, antlers, that kind of thing. So horns represent power and strength. And it's clear that the horns mentioned here represent the nations who had defeated Judah and Jerusalem. Now, there's a lot of debate among Bible scholars and teachers about the number of the horns. Why 4 horns? And I think that it's unclear what the 4 horns represent. One position in among Bible scholars is that the horns represented Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Another position is that the horns represented Assyria, Egypt, Babylon, and Persia. I kind of lean more toward that interpretation of it. Another interpretation is that the horns represented north, south, east, and west, meaning that Israel and Judah were surrounded by their enemies.
Could be that one too.
Could be that one too. I don't see that it's important for us to get down to the level of that level of detail to know what the four horns mean, other than they represent the nations that God used it to punish Israel and Judah. Now, the next part of the vision talks about the fact that God used craftsmen to, what does it say here? Then the Lord showed me 4 craftsmen, and he said, "What?" And I said, "What are these coming to do?" And he said, "These are the horns that scattered Judah so that no one raised his head. And these have come," talking about the craftsmen, "have come to terrify them and cast down the horns of the nations who lifted up their horns against the land of Judah to scatter it." This is a really interesting passage. I've not seen anywhere else in the Bible where in a vision or a prophecy or something like that, God used the symbol of craftsmen to conduct his business.
Yeah. No.
It's a very interesting symbol. And God is careful with his pictures and symbols.
Mhm.
He's very careful with his pictures and symbols. That's why Moses, the second time God told him, the people wanted water. The first time he told him when the people needed water, he said, "Go strike the rock and the water will come out." And he took his staff and he struck the rock and the water came out and they had the water. Later on, they came again complaining about water and food. And God said, "Okay, this time, Moses, I want you to go and speak to the rock and water will come out." But Moses was angry. And what did he do? He struck the rock again. And God says, "Because you didn't obey me to speak to the rock, I'm not going to let you go into the promised land." And God was serious. And Moses complained to him a couple times. And God says, quit bringing that up to me. I'm done. You're not going to the promised land.
Gary, I think the Bible speaks to craftsmen and the building of the temple back in Exodus, don't
That could
they?
be true.
That he used skilled craftsmen.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's true. And there were skilled craftsmen that built the tabernacle
Not the temple.
and the temple. And there are skilled craftsmen in both instances, but this is the first time he's used a craftsman as a symbol of a nation to bring about justice.
Watch that.
And so God's symbols are important to him. And getting back to the thing about Moses, what that second symbol is of speaking to the rock, that symbol is Jesus. The first time Jesus came, he was struck down and went to the cross and rose again. The second time he comes when he's coming as the king, you speak to him. You speak to him. He's not struck. Now he's coming as a king. It's a completely different thing. And that was the symbol that God was trying to show Israel.
Moses messed
And
it up.
Moses messed it up. And God was pretty ticked with him. And so here, this symbol of the craftsmen who are the 4 craftsmen who are to conduct God's judgment on the 4 the nations representing the 4 horns.
Interesting.
So think about what a craftsman is. I found this in my new commentary, and it struck me, and I've been thinking about it ever since, because I think in this instance, God's revealing himself to us in a new way that It's a new way that I've never even contemplated before. That's exciting to me. It's really exciting to me. So what does a craftsman do? A craftsman is a man or woman, could be a craftswoman, but a craftsman is a person who has a project. They know where they're going to go. There's going to be lots of steps in their project, and they will work and work and work and work, and they're doing this and that, and they're measuring and all this stuff. And as you look at what they're doing throughout the steps of building a project, it doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes when you look at it, because if you don't know exactly what they're building, you're going, what in the world is that guy doing? I've seen a lot of short videos on, I don't know, that for some reason I get them on Facebook, and I get a little tired of seeing them, but it shows some guy building something, and I'm looking at it, I'm trying to follow what he's building. And so I sit there watching it just to figure out if I can figure out what he's building. And so most of the time I have to wait a long time, and all of a sudden he says, oh, that's what he's building. And it's clear, and it's usually something that's useful or pretty or something like that. The finished product is always really good, but during the building, it often just doesn't make sense. And
I
God,
think of like a stone cutter or those people that make the statues out of stone, they start with a block. And then
really.
you see what it turns into at the very end.
Right.
yeah, and some of these, and you think of a carpenter who's got plans, and what if you didn't know he was building a house, you might never figure out what he was doing, because he's looking at plans and he's doing a lot of measuring and so forth. He's cutting wood and laying it out. And after a while, you can figure out what he's doing. But for a long time during that process, it's pretty hard to see what he's doing. God's trying to show us who he is. And God is the master craftsman.
Mhm.
He's always working on things. He's got the end in mind, and he's doing things along the way, using different people, bringing in this detail, bringing in this detail, bringing in this detail, bringing in this detail. And we may never even know what he's building at the end. We may not even see it in this life. We might not see it until we get to heaven and he reveals what he's doing.
Yeah, this reminds me of Abraham believed God and said, I'm going to build for you a city.
Yeah.
Abraham never saw it,
Never saw
but the
it.
city is in heaven, and that's been a real long project.
And
He's
yeah,
always doing a good work in us. I mean,
yeah, and God told Abraham, I will bless the nations through you. Abraham never saw that. How did he do that? Jesus Christ.
No. But that was nearly 2,000 years later.
And I think about that with our, I was just thinking about this with where the state of the world is today. So many things are happening, and Israel's fighting over here, and the Ukraine and Russia are fighting, and there's discord here and there. And people don't agree with these people, and la, and so forth. But God's at work, and God always uses things that are bad to make things that are good.
Does it good.
He is the master craftsman. And when it's done, it's going to be so beautiful. When Jesus comes back to be the king, it's going to be such a beautiful thing. And God's working up to that right now, even though we can't see it. And I just thought, what a beautiful way of looking at what God is doing in the world today. We don't understand what he's doing. We don't understand how he's using people and doing this and that. Why would he allow this to happen in this country, or allow this to happen in this part of the world, or allow this to happen in the United States, or whatever it is that's happening? Why would God allow that to happen? Because he's got a plan and he's working on that plan. He's the master craftsman. We just have to trust him. We have to trust him and believe that he knows what he's about. And in the end, it's going to be beautiful. God has made promises for Israel to Israel. He's going to fulfill this. He's working on fulfilling those promises to this moment of this day. But he's not there yet. He's not there yet. He's the master craftsman. He's putting the materials together. He's bringing these people together. He's doing this thing here. He's doing this thing there. And it's hard for us. We can't see it, but he knows all the details. And in the end, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So when I saw this, I just thought, oh man, this is a beautiful way of looking at God. The Bible reveals to us who God is in new and exciting ways. The more we study it, the more we see new things. And I'd read this before, didn't understand it, hadn't even really thought about it too much. And then when I started reading the commentary and then started meditating on it, wow, I got excited. Now, looking at it this way, I start to understand God a little bit better. And when I understand God a little better, I can trust him more. You look at Abraham over his life. When he first started, God told him, okay, I want you to go and leave your family and just go. And I'm going to bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And Abraham has struggled with faith in God. He believed God, but yet he struggled. If they hadn't struggled in their faith, they would have never involved Hagar, and we would never had Ishmael, and we would never had Arabs or Islam or any of that stuff, which is a result of Abraham and Sarah's trouble of believing God. But when you get to the end of Abraham's life, he had learned to, over time, he had learned to trust in God so much that when God says, go sacrifice your son, your only son, on Mount Moriah, Abraham got up the next morning and did it.
Well,
And he believed that God would raise his son from the dead. But what happened is God stopped him from sacrificing Isaac.
another time.
And it's just what a beautiful way to look at God. He is the master craftsman, and God was the one that identified the nations and the peoples that then went and cast down the horns, which were the nations that had defeated Israel and Judah.
I look at it like the four horns did not surprise God.
No.
He knew about them way back then
Mhm.
because he knew what Israel was doing. They were not obeying God. So he prepares everything, like you prepare the beef stew. He got the four nations. He moved them in. And then from there, it moved on. So it's all God's doing, just like right now. You sit there and say, why did God let 6 million people, his people, killed during the Holocaust? Why is he allowing all these neighbors to shoot missiles into Israel now? He's got a plan. It's already been worked out in his mind. So we don't know what the plan will, but we do know that in the end times, there will still be Israel.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
in church today, they had a thing up on the top. It's talking about things bad happens. He says, let me tell you what, this is what happens. And he had a big slide that said, God wins. God wins.
Yeah, he just went to a slide and says, what happens? God wins. I thought that was perfect. God wins.
Because he said, your candidate may win, your candidate may lose, whatever, God wins. God wins,
Yeah.
no matter what. So God wins.
And I thought when I was running the side project computer, I thought when I saw that and listened to how he put it in his message, I thought, yep, that sure matches what we're studying tonight.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, boy, I'm running out of time, aren't I? And I got a lot more to go. Okay. Let's look at the next vision, which is a vision of a man with a measuring line in Zechariah 2, verses 1 to 13. We're going to start with verses 1 through 5. Nancy, could you read that? Zechariah 2, 1 through 5.
Nancy's muted.
Nancy, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Unmute.
There
Hey,
you go.
sorry.
It's all
Yeah.
That's right.
That was blessing Virginia for sneezing.
No.
So I had muted. Okay, and I lifted my eyes and saw and behold a man with a measuring line in his hand. Then I said, "Where are you going?" And he said to me, "To measure Jerusalem, to see what is its width and what is its length." And behold, the angel who talked with me came forward, and another angel came forward and met him and said to him, "Run, say to that young man, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as villages without walls because of the multitude of people and livestock in it. And I will be to her a wall of fire all around, declares the Lord, and be the glory in her midst."
So measuring Jerusalem is a symbol of God evaluating what will become of Jerusalem. It's very fitting following what we just learned about God being the master craftsman.
Mhm.
What's the first thing most craftsmen do? They get out a measuring tape or a yardstick or some kind of measuring device to measure what they're going to build. And God's not any different. Jerusalem had been destroyed and needed to be repaired. So God promised to guide its repair as a master craftsman. The message was that Jerusalem would be rebuilt for lots of people and animals to live in.
Well, it's kind of the way it is now, There's the wall, but yet there's people all around,
Yeah, that's just
not
the
just
part.
in the wall.
Right.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. Those are the things I was thinking about.
Oh, sorry, I took
That's
your.
right.
No, you didn't. That's good. It helps because that's exactly where our minds ought to go. Because in Zechariah's day, a city always had walls for protection, always. And cities for 1,000 years after Zechariah, or even more probably.
They had walls around them until they invented cannons.
Yep.
Period.
Thank you. Yeah, cannons and bombs, gunpowder and stuff like that is what stopped people from doing. Walls became superfluous.
Yeah, they could knock it down without getting close.
Right.
But up until then,
Only in relatively modern times have cities been built without walls.
that's right.
And so here's Jerusalem, just like you said. Now we see Jerusalem, and sort of there's a wall there, sort of, but it's really not so much. So God promised to be a wall of fire. They don't need a wall of rock. They need a wall of fire provided by God. I love that. And then God also promised to be the glory in her midst. This prophecy, I believe, has a double meaning. I think it is a prophecy about Zechariah's time, telling him, "Trust me, I've got you back. Go out and rebuild the city. Go out and build the temple," as he's trying to do. But it's also a prophecy about when Jesus is the king in the future. And when he returns to be the king, Jerusalem will be his capital, and it's going to be so full of people, there ain't going to be room within the walls or whatever the city is. It's going to be like it is today, all spread out with suburbs and all that stuff. because there's going to be so many people. I think that's an exciting thing. Bob, could you read verses 6 through 13?
Yes. Up, up, flee from the land of the north, declares the Lord. For I have spread you abroad as the four winds of the heavens, declares the Lord. Up, escape to Zion, you who dwell with the daughter of Babylon. For thus said the Lord of hosts, after his glory sent me to the nations who plundered you. He who touches you touches the apple of his eye. Behold, I will shake my hand over them, and they shall become plunder for those who served them. Then you will know that the Lord of hosts has sent me. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for behold, I come, and I will dwell in your midst, declares the Lord. And many nations shall join themselves to the Lord in that day, and shall be my people. And I will dwell in your midst, and you shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you. And the Lord will inherit Judah as his portion, the Holy Land, and will again choose Jerusalem. Be silent, flesh, before the Lord, for he has roused himself from his holy dwelling.
Okay, so there's kind of four messages within this part of what you just read, Bob.
Yeah.
We're gonna, please don't push me. Verses 6 and 7, the message is to flee from the land of the north. The land of the north was Babylon. It was God that sent them out of Israel and Judah, and at the time, but that was only temporary. He was telling Zechariah it was time to return to Jerusalem from exile in Babylon. Verses 8 and 9, the message is that God will punish the nations that plundered them. God said, he who touches you touches the apple of his eye. The idea of an apple of his eye comes from Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 10, which says, he found him in a desert land and in the howling waste of the wilderness. He encircled him and he cared for him and he kept him as the apple of his eye. The commentary said, I read this and I thought, oh, I never thought about that before. They said the phrase apple of his eye literally means the gate or opening of the eye, and can be really translated as the pupil of the eye. The pupil is the most sensitive part of the eye. It is also functionally one of the most important parts of the eye because it's where the light enters the eye. And with the light comes the image that we're seeing. The pupil also determines how much light enters the eye. If it is too much light, the images are blurry, and if it's too little, the images will be indistinct. So, you get in light, if it's real light, the pupil gets real small and it's dark, and it expands. The passage in Deuteronomy indicates that we protect the pupil, and God protects us. We are important to him just as Israel is important to him. We are the apple of God's eye, just as Israel was the apple of God's eye. And God did punish the nations who plundered Israel and Judah. We know that the angel of the Lord killed 185,000 soldiers of Assyria in one night. And it wasn't long after this that Assyria was defeated by Babylon. Then Babylon was later defeated by Persia. And Persia was later defeated by Greece, and Greece was later defeated by Rome, and so forth. Verses 10 to 12, the message is that God will bless Israel and Judah, and through him he will bless peoples from many nations. I like what it says in verse 11, where it says the promise of verse 11 is that many nations will join themselves to the Lord and will be God's people. I believe this started when the Ethiopian eunuch was saved and Cornelius and his whole household was saved right after Pentecost. I believe that we, the Gentile church, partially fulfilled this promise. However, I believe it will be fully fulfilled during Jesus' reign as a king on the earth. When Jesus is the king, all these nations are going to come and join in because they're going to want to, because he's the king and he's going to be something else as a king. Well, God did choose Jerusalem. He did allow, he wanted the people to come back. He did bless them at the time of Zechariah, but he's going to really do it at the time of Jesus' second coming. So all of these visions so far have had a double prophecy in it. First, there's a prophecy for at the time of Zechariah, and second, there's a prophecy for the second coming. And then finally, verse 13, the message is for us to be silent before the Lord. Silence equals submission. People that aren't silent will be complaining, pushing back, etc. We must recognize God as the ultimate power and authority. And when we do, we will silently submit to him. Also, we cannot listen to God if we are talking. It's important for us to listen to God. Questions or comments on this? There's a lot here. I would encourage you to meditate on this passage. There's a lot here. There's a lot.
That's where my one phrase that I always like to use. It's like, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. It's not listen, Lord, for your servant is talking. It's
Can't help but think about what's going to happen to these, the Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran who are going against Israel and what's going to happen to them. Even this scripture talks about how God's going to destroy them.
It won't end well.
No, it won't.
It never does.
I see out of all of it. Go ahead, Nancy. Sorry.
Go ahead, Barbara.
No, I say what I see out of all of this is that God is calling people to himself.
Yes.
And all the disobedience is the rejection of God.
Mm-hmm. Truly is.
And that's what he wants. He wants people to come to him.
That's right. Well, he started out, Zechariah, saying, turn to me and I will turn to you.
Mm-hmm.
And really he continues that theme throughout.
Yeah, it's a change.
I can't help but thinking it talks about the fire around, makes me think of the Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He had a fire around them at night to
And they stayed put
from
till
the
they didn't
enemy.
come over. That's right.
Yep, that's right. Absolutely. And well, I think of Elisha when their town was surrounded and his servant came and, man, they've surrounded us. What are we going to do? And Elisha says, Lord, open his eyes. And he opened his eyes and he saw fiery chariots.
The armies of God.
The armies of God surrounding them.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'll see your chariot and raise you fiery ones.
That's right. All right. Let's